daily offerings and Shabbat offerings each have a sheep or so. Now, we do see that there's a couple places where it specifies the correspondence, and basically I'm going to say two things. One is mostly the wine pouring out, the libating, the volume of the wine corresponds to the volume of the animal's meat being offered. So there's a quarter hin for every sheep offered, a third of a hin for every ram offered, and a half hin for every cattle offered.
There's really like a range for sacrifices. You have like bulls, which are the biggest, then rams, then sheep. Those are your big animals, and then you have birds and flour offerings, and that sort of. So yeah, so presumably goats are with sheep in terms of size and also in terms of libations. Also, what's interesting is there's often things that have libations also have a flour offering, have a mincha, and and the mincha will have oil. You mix the flour with oil, and you have it ends up being like it's sort of deep fried or a really tasty
thing.
Or
a donut.
A donut, exactly.
Yeah.
And the amount of wine in the libation is equivalent usually to the amount of oil in the flour offering. So there's that correlation too. So the bigger the animal, the bigger the flour, the meal offering that accompanies it, and the bigger the libation. And as it gets smaller, you have less, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Big meals have big sides.
Right. The volume always corresponds with each other compared to the meats. And I think it's fitting at this time. You introduced me to Dr. Meschel's book, where this idea of basically a combo meal, that anybody who sees advertisements for restaurants offering combo meals, it doesn't consist of fries and a drink. There's the meat component, and then you have the fries and the drink. And similarly here, we've got a combo meal where we have the meat, and then we have the starch, this cake-like thing, this doughy cake, and then we also have wine.
Right. Yeah. Actually, Dr. Meschel's a teacher of mine, a beloved teacher of mine, and it's really fascinating. Before I read it in the book, I actually studied it in a class with him, and you get the sense of, instead of this just being a collection of random details, there's a pattern here. The pattern is, and it's said explicitly, unclear how to interpret it, but God, God says, my meat, my food, my offering in Numbers 28. And the sacrifices are presented as God's food. He eats them in his house.
Yeah.
And there's a table and there's a candelabra, and so there's this model of God living in the temple and eating the food, at least, and dwelling there. What you do with that theologically is a different question, but that's what the biblical text says, and the model for the food makes a lot of sense too, right? God is offered as food meat sacrifices, and along with the meat you have, right, as you said, you have a starch side and you have a drink. And it really fits exactly with the combo meal.